Ricky's lifelong love leaves work late into the night and is intercepted by a group of lowly, drug-dealing thugs. They capture her and lock her inside a rusty, abandoned building while they argue among themselves about what they should do with her.
What's wrong with you? If an old woman sees you, am I to deal with her?
By pure luck, the girlfriend makes a daring escape from her captors, but ends up running off the building to her own demise. Fueled with hate and anger at this devastating outcome, the young Ricky seeks out the crime boss behind this whole operation. On a cold, foggy night, they have a face-off, ending with the crime boss's murder and Ricky with 5 bullets in his chest. This leaves the protagonist of this story with a sentence of several decades for manslaughter and assault. There in the prison, he does everything to make the authorities regret their decision to put him there. The prison bus carries Ricky Ho, a young man with superhuman strength, and enters a massive prison complex way out in the middle of nowhere. The young man has been convicted of the murder of a crime boss responsible for his girlfriend Keiko's death. In this gloomy world, all prisons have become privatized, with brutal systems of control, turning this place into a living hell. The newly arrived prisoners are gathered together and treated like animals while they are forced through metal detectors and assigned positions in what will become their new home for many long years. When it's Ricky's turn, he simply refuses to follow their instructions and jumps right through the metal detector. The alarm goes off and the guards immediately jump, believing Ricky must be carrying weapons. To their surprise, when they conduct an x-ray, they find that this man with a six-pack has bullets in his chest as souvenirs, which he refuses to let anyone, even doctors, remove. Later, an officer explains the prison hierarchy to the newcomers. He says the prison is divided by compass directions into 4 wings called North, South, East, and West, and each wing is controlled by one of the 4 heavenly kings who together form the Gang of 4.
Each wing is controlled by a leader.
Above them stand the warden and the assistant warden who run the entire place. All the new inmates are warned very clearly that they must not break even a single rule inside this prison. Out of these 4 sections, Ricky ends up assigned to the North Wing. One unfortunate day, an old inmate gets bullied by Samuel, the right-hand man of the North Wing leader. The old-timer is close to finishing his probation soon, but the bully warns him that nobody leaves this place without his permission. The poor geezer makes the mistake of resisting the harassment and gets brutally beaten by Samuel and his lackeys. When Samuel smashes a small toy that the old man has carefully built for his son, the helpless man finally snaps and desperately charges at the bully with a woodworking plane in his hand. However, he gets quickly overpowered as Samuel snatches the tool from the old man's grip and viciously disfigures his face. Ricky immediately steps in and retaliates, causing Samuel to trip forward so his face slams directly into a wooden plank covered in nails, which leaves him partially blinded. This sudden counterattack scares the right-hand man of the North King and his gang badly enough that they run off like frightened puppies. Back inside his cell, Samuel begins plotting revenge against Ricky together with his lackeys. They come up with the idea of releasing Mad Dragon, a hippo of a man with an appetite to match, who has been locked away deep in solitary confinement, and then paying him to kill Ricky. To carry out the plan, Samuel approaches a corrupt prison guard and quietly bribes him to release Mad Dragon earlier than scheduled from solitary confinement.
You can take my allowance for this month as a reward.
Later, the old man who works in the factory is called over by the prison guards. They inform him that his probation has been rejected because he has secretly been writing letters to his wife and child. These false accusations completely devastate the old-timer. With no future left to hope for, he ends his life that very night by hanging himself in despair. The entire prison grows sad over this loss and the unfair treatment because the only thing the old man had ever done was accidentally run someone over while rushing his pregnant wife to the hospital. When Ricky hears about this, he becomes furious. That night, carrying a heavy heart, the young inmate quietly pays his respects to the departed man while mourning the loss of a fellow prisoner. He has even repaired the small toy the old man made and gently places it back into his hands before leaving. The next day, while our protagonist is taking a shower, he suddenly gets ambushed by the massive Mad Dragon. The huge fatty casually tells the inmate that someone has promised him a boatload of rice if he manages to send Ricky into early retirement. The giant man first throws Ricky across the room and slams him into the wall, but when he charges again to finish the job, the inmate drives his fist straight through Mad Dragon's belly, punching a hole clean through him and putting the so-called dragon to rest. After seeing his plan fail, Samuel tries to catch Ricky off guard and even manages to drive a nail through his palm. Ricky, however, turns that moment into an advantage and snaps Samuel's fingers before ripping open his stomach, leaving a massive hole just like the one his oversized hitman ended up with. The guards quickly rush in and drag Ricky away, but soon the king of the North Wing, Ah Hai, approaches him and warns that a brutal punishment now awaits him for what he has done. When Ricky is finally taken back to his cell, he feels an intense wave of pain but manages to live through it through serious meditation. As he does, he gets a flashback to a memory from long ago, where the young Ricky stumbles upon Uncle Ghost in a foggy cemetery. Uncle Ghost tells him that he has seen Ricky possessing superhuman strength ever since he was a child, and that he has been keeping an eye on him ever since. When Uncle Ghost asks if he still has the same strength as when he was a kid, the boy shows off some flashy moves, but he gets swatted away like a worthless fly. Realizing how weak he truly is, Ricky literally falls down to his new mentor's knees and begs him to teach him the ways of Qigong, which he later uses to unlock some insane powers. The next morning, our inmate is dragged away from his quarters to meet the assistant warden, who is enjoying a lavish meal. The man is a stuffed fool with a Captain Hook-like arm and only one eye, giving him the nickname Cyclops. The escorting officer reads Ricky's record, noting a period of 2 years during which he was nowhere to be found. Cyclops notices this and starts prying for answers, resorting to manhandling our protagonist in an attempt to make him spill the beans, but Ricky remains defiant. Tensions escalate as Cyclops threatens Ricky with his girlfriend, triggering a full-on confrontation that ends with Cyclops barely surviving a fatal blow to the head, as Ricky pulls back at the last second. Broken and helpless, Ricky takes the photo and returns to his cell. He begins playing his flute to get his mind off things, remembering a better time when he was enjoying moments with his girlfriend and neither of them had a care in the world. The memory is cut short, however, when a guard suddenly scolds him and orders him to stop playing. Meanwhile, Leader Hai meets the frightened assistant warden in his office. The chubby warden hands Hai a special knife and orders him to publicly execute our protagonist while putting on a good show for the prison. So the North Wing leader hangs a deviant member of the wing, Kwang, on a cross with chains to lure Ricky out. Kwang was a good man, but he made the foolish mistake of defying the orders of the wing leader. To punish him for this act, he is hanged as an example for everyone to see, especially our inmates. Hai's plan works perfectly, as Ricky, with his strong sense of justice, dives headfirst into danger to save Kwang and challenges Hai to a battle. To our protagonist's horror, in the middle of this intense face-off, he is suddenly blinded by powdered glass from the same knife the gang leader was gifted. In a panic, Ricky stumbles upon a sewer cover and cracks it open, allowing water to gush out and wash away the powdered glass. Ricky gets his vision restored, and his battle is now being spectated by the entire North Wing. Ricky easily dodges his opponent and beats down the gang leader like a cornered dog. Seeing his inevitable defeat, Hai decides to end his own life right then and there. However, as a final act of defiance, the leader tries to murder Ricky by strangling him with his own guts. Ricky manages to escape the attempt and once again comes out victorious. After seeing a glimmer of hope from Ricky, the prisoners begin to rise up and try to attack Cyclops for his harsh oppression, but they are quickly stopped in their tracks. The 3 other gang leaders arrive on the scene, including the West Wing leader Huang Chung, the East Wing leader Taizan, and the South Wing leader White. Cyclops challenges Ricky to take on all 3 leaders at once, but he refuses and instead carries the now deceased Kwang back to the North Wing, while Hai's godson Sa watches the entire scene in horror. Later, Ricky takes the time to befriend Sa by teaching him how to play the flute using only a single leaf. To his shock, he discovers that someone has cruelly cut off Sa's tongue, leaving the godson completely powerless and unable to speak. Ricky feels a deep sense of sympathy and gives Sa his own flute, and in return, Sa unknowingly gives him a poppy leaf to play music on. When Ricky questions him about the origin of the leaf, he learns that Huang Chung is secretly growing opium in the West Wing. The West Wing leader finds out about Sei's apparent betrayal, and she, together with the other 2 leaders, plots to send him to the afterlife. As if on cue, Sa arrives right at the location of the 3 leaders. To test his supposed loyalty, they hand him the gifted knife from Hai and command him to take revenge on Ricky for his bold act of defiance. But Sa has different plans of his own. In a cruel twist of fate, the 3 leaders decide to send the godson to meet his father for an early reunion. Ricky discovers what they have done and is left completely devastated by the revelation. Our inmate, filled with hatred and anger, storms straight toward the poppy plantation and sets it entirely ablaze. In a fit of pure rage, Huang Chung charges at our protagonist while the prisoners seize the moment to riot and attempt to burn down the prison in chaos. Meanwhile, Cyclops witnesses the commotion and throws yet another one of his massive tantrums. He immediately commands that every prisoner be rounded up and locked back in their cells without delay. To make matters far worse, a guard rushes in to inform the fat warden that the warden is returning from his vacation in Hawaii, leaving him stunned and unsure how to respond. Back at the fight, White steps in alongside Huang Chung, ready to finish finish off Ricky once and for all. Just as it seems he is about to be put out of his misery, Taizan intervenes, insisting they cannot take him down until he has fought with the hulking man himself. At that precise moment, the zero alarm goes off, signaling that anyone found outside their cells within the next minute will be shot on sight. Fearing for their lives, the two leaders retreat, and our inmate is dragged along with Taizan to supposed safety. The assistant warden seizes the opportunity to finally rid himself of the pesky protagonist and locks the room down completely. Molten cement gushes in, but our protagonist somehow makes it out just in the nick of time with Taizan. He wastes no time and attempts to flee and expose the assistant's dirty little secret to everyone, but gets stopped in his tracks. Apparently, the cement coating him freezes solid, which traps him in place. Early in the next morning, the assistant warden greets the warden and his ape-like son as if they are movie stars walking onto a Hollywood set. Back in his lavish office, the warden grills the fatty over everything that has happened in his absence. Cyclops reports that all the opium stock has been burned to ashes, and then reveals the culprit behind it all as our protagonist, who is now shackled and trapped behind bars. Seeing the new faces, Ricky immediately breaks free from his restraints and grabs the old man by the neck. He threatens him, but he is cut off when Taizan enters the cell, ready to punish him. The old man sits back, anticipating the show from Taizan. Our inmate takes the beating, serving as the brute's punching bag. Once Ricky has had enough, he seizes the upper hand and mauls Taizan down, leaving him all bloody and helpless. Eager to finish the job himself, the warden triggers the cell's roof to crush both of them like a hydraulic press. Our inmate fights with all his strength to stop the trap, but fails when the old man zaps him with a stun gun out of nowhere. Just when it seems all is lost, Taizan rises again and holds the crushing roof back long enough for Ricky to make a narrow escape. The horrified protagonist watches the gang leader get crushed, sacrificing his life in order to save him. Ricky pleads with the warden and his assistant, but is interrupted as a trapdoor opens beneath him. The old man has our protagonist tied up in the prison yard and forces all the prisoners to bury him alive. He proposes a challenge that if Ricky survives a full week buried alive, all his crimes will be pardoned. Through sheer willpower and determination, our inmate endures his time, playing his flute to keep his mind sharp and focused. But his brief moment of relief doesn't last long, as the West and South Wing leaders arrive and block his oxygen tube with raw meat, trying to ensure his death. Yet somehow, our protagonist survives even this through the sheer force of his incredible power. Throughout his confinement, he is haunted by memories of his past, of how his girlfriend ended up in the wrong hands and fell into an eternal slumber. After the 7 days pass, the old man, his son, and Cyclops confidently arrive to declare Ricky finished. Yet to everyone's shock, our inmate has been fast asleep the entire time. Frustrated by another failed attempt to make him die, the gang leaders and the trio drag Ricky away for another trial, preparing even harsher challenges. They subject him to every form of brutal torture imaginable, from relentless beating with a wrench to being forced to swallow razor blades, sparing nothing in their attempt to break our protagonist's iron will. At his lowest point, on the brink of total annihilation, an ally named Freddy secretly feeds the starving inmate. This act of kindness, however, costs Freddy his life, as one of the prisoners informs Cyclops. The power-hungry fatty drags Freddy's body out for our inmate to see, only to find the cell empty. Cyclops enters the cell, only to be ambushed by our protagonist, who nearly finishes him off. Ricky pauses to thank the dying man for his generosity, but his escape is cut short as the furious prisoners finally corner and beat him senseless. Now, Ricky and the rioting prisoners head straight toward the warden for a final showdown. The old man enjoys himself as he leisurely tours the kitchen and inspects the meals of the prisoners. Just then, Cyclops bursts violently through a wall with our protagonist right behind him. Seeing the commotion and realizing that a full-blown riot has erupted, the old man decides to take matters entirely into his own hands. He pulls out his revolver and, in a shocking turn of events, ends the life of the assistant warden right there and then. To support their boss, the two remaining gang leaders arrive once more, ready to intervene. Ricky, however, is fully prepared this time and immediately puts Huang Chung into an early retirement, forcing White to flee in absolute terror. Seeing this blatant act of disloyalty, the old man once again turns against his ally and ruthlessly murders the South Wing leader on the spot. In a scene that feels ripped straight out of a cowboy movie, the two confront each other, man to man. After exchanging only a few brutal blows, the old man suddenly begins shaking violently with his entire body transformed transforming into a colossal monster twice the size of our protagonist. With his monstrous strength, the old man makes swift work of the protagonist, beating him into a pulp in a matter of moments. Desperate to put an end to it all, the young man charges the monstrous old man one last time and, through sheer effort and some miracle, manages to overpower him. Ricky hurls the old man into a nearby meat grinder, reducing him to an ugly, disgusting pile of jello while carefully keeping only his head as a personal trophy for himself. The protagonist holds the head up high in front of the remaining inmates and guards, stopping the riot completely. Feeling stronger and more determined than ever, he punches the prison wall with a glowing fist and breaks a huge hole that lets all the inmates escape. Without waiting, he finally walks through the opening and leaves prison life behind.